Princess Eugenie has reportedly cut off all contact with her father, Prince Andrew, amid the continuing fallout from his association with Jeffrey Epstein. What was once a public scandal managed by palace distance and silence has now moved firmly into the private lives of the royals themselves. This is not speculation. Multiple sources close to the family say the decision is real, deliberate and deeply emotional, marking one of the most serious internal family breaks Prince Andrew has faced since the controversy began. For a monarchy built on discretion, this moment is significant. A decisive and deeply personal break has now reshaped the private dynamics of the royal family. Multiple sources close to the household confirm that Princess Eugenie has cut off all contact with her father, Prince Andrew, ending communication entirely. This was not a gradual distancing or a temporary pause. It was a clear and deliberate decision to sever ties. Eugenie did not visit Andrew over the Christmas period, did not speak with him privately, and has made it known that she no longer wishes to maintain any form of personal relationship. Those familiar with the situation describe the estrangement as total, with no quiet meetings, no back-channel conversations, and no attempts at reconciliation behind the scenes. Until this point, Eugenie had been widely seen as Andrew's strongest remaining supporter within the family. She was photographed alongside him during moments of intense public scrutiny and was believed to have maintained a close bond even after he withdrew from public royal duties. That history makes this rupture especially significant. There has been no public statement from Eugenie herself, and none is expected. In royal terms, such silence is rarely accidental. It signals resolve rather than emotion, and finality rather than conflict. This is not a symbolic gesture or a public relations move. It is a complete severing of personal ties, one that fundamentally alters Prince Andrew's remaining connections within the royal family and underscores how deeply the fallout continues to run. The timing of Princess Eugenie's decision is not accidental. According to multiple sources, this rupture followed a period of renewed scrutiny surrounding Prince Andrew and his past association with Jeffrey Epstein, reigniting tensions that had never fully settled. While the central allegations are not new, what has changed is the context. Andrew's continued refusal to publicly acknowledge regret or offer an apology to Epstein's victims has reportedly become a decisive factor. Those close to the family say this silence, rather than any single revelation, created a moral impasse that Eugenie could no longer overlook. For Eugenie, the issue cuts deeper than reputation. She is a co-founder of the Anti-Slavery Collective, an organisation dedicated to raising awareness of modern slavery, exploitation, and human trafficking. Sources suggest that the contrast between her public advocacy and her father's unwillingness to confront the broader harm associated with Epstein's crimes became increasingly difficult to reconcile. This was not a sudden emotional reaction, but the end result of mounting frustration. Friends describe Eugenie as having spent years attempting to balance loyalty to her father with her own values and public responsibilities. That balance, they say, finally collapsed. The decision to cut off contact appears to have followed private conversations in which no resolution was reached. When change failed to materialise, Eugenie chose distance instead. In that sense, the timing reflects not escalation, but exhaustion. A moment when continued silence became untenable. Not everyone in the family has responded in the same way. Princess Beatrice, Andrew's elder daughter, has chosen a more cautious approach. While she has distanced herself publicly from the controversy, she has not completely cut off contact with her father. Andrew was invited to attend the christening of Beatrice's daughter, Athena. He reportedly attended the ceremony itself but did not remain for the social gathering afterward, a detail many observers interpreted as symbolic. Those close to Beatrice say she is attempting to balance loyalty to her father with an awareness of the wider consequences for the royal family. The contrast between the sisters' responses highlights just how fractured the situation has become. For Prince Andrew, the decision by his daughter represents a deeply personal blow at a time when his world has already narrowed considerably. Sources close to Prince Andrew describe him as devastated by Princess Eugenie's decision to cut off contact. Until now, she had remained one of the few family members still believed to maintain a close relationship with him. Losing that connection has reportedly left Andrew increasingly isolated both emotionally and socially. This personal estrangement comes as his physical circumstances also continue to change. Removal vans have been seen at Royal Lodge, his long-time residence in Windsor Great Park, as preparations are made for a move into more modest accommodation. Once a senior working royal with ceremonial duties and military titles, Andrew now lives largely out of public view. His movements and role significantly curtailed. Despite this, Andrew continues to deny any criminal wrongdoing and has never admitted liability in relation to his association with Jeffrey Epstein. However, sources say his refusal to publicly express regret or acknowledge the wider harm linked to Epstein's crimes has contributed to the erosion of trust within his own family. What makes this moment particularly stark is that Andrew's isolation is no longer imposed solely by the institution of the monarchy. It is now mirrored within his private life. The withdrawal of support from a daughter, once seen as steadfast, underscores how far his position has weakened. This is not simply reputational damage, it is a narrowing of personal relationships, and for Andrew, it marks one of the most profound consequences yet of a scandal that continues to reshape his life. Beyond the emotional rupture, the breakdown in relations has brought renewed attention to the financial consequences surrounding Prince Andrew's position, particularly the future of Royal Lodge. Royal Lodge, Andrew's long-time residence within Windsor Great Park, is held under a lease arrangement that cannot be inherited by his daughters. According to reports, Princesses Eugenie and Beatrice had previously expected the property to provide long-term security for their families. That expectation has now been significantly undermined. Experts familiar with Crown estate arrangements say that once Andrew vacates the property, Royal Lodge will revert fully to the Crown. This means it will no longer be part of any potential inheritance, removing a major asset from the family line. The shift carries both financial and symbolic weight, reinforcing Andrew's diminishing standing within the royal structure. The financial fallout comes at a time when Andrew no longer receives public funding and has been stripped of his royal titles and military affiliations. While he retains private means, his ability to maintain the lifestyle associated with Royal Lodge has been increasingly questioned. Sources suggest that the uncertainty surrounding housing and inheritance has added strain to already fragile family relationships. What was once assumed stability has become ambiguity, and the loss of Royal Lodge represents more than property. It represents the narrowing of options. For Eugenie and Beatrice, the issue is not merely financial. It underscores how deeply their father's fall from royal favour has altered the future they once imagined. The inheritance question, like the family rift itself, reflects the lasting and tangible consequences of a scandal that continues to ripple outward. Christmas at Sandringham has long been one of the most carefully observed moments in the royal calendar, offering rare insight into internal family dynamics. This year, what stood out most was not what was said, but who was absent. Princess Eugenie and Princess Beatrice both attended the traditional Christmas gathering with the wider royal family. Prince Andrew did not. His absence was immediately noticed and widely interpreted as more than coincidence. In royal settings, exclusion is rarely accidental and silence often carries its own message. Palace sources played down any suggestion of open conflict, describing arrangements as routine and private. Yet observers noted the contrast with previous years, when Andrew had at least some presence within the family circle, even after stepping back from public duties. The visual symbolism mattered. Eugenie's decision to attend without her father reinforced reports of a complete personal break. There were no photographs of shared moments, no carefully managed gestures of unity, and no attempt to soften the narrative through public appearances. For the monarchy, Christmas is often used to project stability and continuity. This time, the quiet absence of Prince Andrew instead highlighted how far his position has shifted without statements or confront. Throughout this episode, the royal family has responded not with statements but with restraint. There's been no public comment from Princess Eugenie, no clarification from Princess Beatrice, and no attempt by the palace to counter or soften reports of the family rift. That silence is widely understood to be deliberate. Sources close to the household suggest the guiding principle has been containment. Rather than reigniting public debate around Prince Andrew, the focus has shifted to protecting the next generation of royals from further reputational harm. In that context, distance becomes strategy. Under King Charles III, the monarchy has shown little appetite for revisiting controversies linked to Andrew. Instead, there is an emphasis on drawing clear boundaries between him and the institution. Allowing personal decisions by his daughters to unfold without comment fits that approach. Royal historians note that silence has often been used as a stabilising tool, a way to let time and absence do the work that words cannot. By avoiding public confrontation, the palace reduces the risk of escalation, while signalling that Andrew's position is no longer central. In effect, the strategy is not reconciliation, but separation. It reflects an understanding that the monarchy's survival depends less on defending individuals and more on preserving trust. In this case, quiet distance may be the most powerful message of all. For Prince Andrew, the consequences of this family rupture extend well beyond personal hurt. They mark a further narrowing of a life already reshaped by scandal and withdrawal. Andrew no longer holds royal titles, military affiliations, or public duties. He does not represent the monarchy in any official capacity and rarely appears at public events. What remained until now was a degree of private support, particularly from Princess Eugenie, who had been seen as one of his closest allies within the family. That support has now receded. Sources suggest that Andrew's daily life has become increasingly isolated. His move away from Royal Lodge underscores a shift not just in residence, but in status. Once a central figure within royal life, he now occupies a peripheral position, both institutionally and personally. Crucially, this isolation is no longer imposed solely by the palace, it is mirrored within his own family relationships. The loss of contact with a daughter who once stood by him represents a significant emotional blow and one that cannot be mitigated by official silence or controlled appearances. Andrew continues to deny any criminal wrongdoing and has avoided public expressions of regret related to his association with Jeffrey Epstein. However, the cost of that position is increasingly visible. The boundaries around him have tightened and the space he occupies within the royal world has diminished further. What remains is a private individual living with the long-term consequences of decisions that continue to reverberate, not just in public perception, but within his own family. This story has captured public attention not simply because it involves royalty, but because it reflects a broader and deeply human conflict. At its core, it is about accountability, values, and the limits of loyalty. Princess Eugenie's decision speaks to a moment many families recognise when personal principles collide with emotional bonds. That tension is amplified here by the scale of the controversy and the global attention surrounding it. In recent years, public attitudes toward power and privilege have shifted. There is greater scrutiny of institutions once shielded by tradition and less tolerance for silence when harm is perceived. Against that backdrop, a daughter choosing distance rather than defence resonates strongly. The story also reflects a changing monarchy. Younger royals are increasingly viewed not just as representatives of an institution, but as individuals shaped by modern expectations around ethics and responsibility. Eugenie's work in anti-slavery advocacy adds further weight to the symbolism of her decision. Beyond the palace walls, the narrative taps into a wider cultural reckoning, one in which reputation, accountability, and moral clarity matter more than lineage. That is why this moment has travelled so far beyond royal reporting. It is not simply a royal family dispute. It is a reflection of how public values have evolved and how even the most traditional institutions are no longer insulated from them.